Acosta just reminded me that I was not recording.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God. I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Sorry, Maria, for...
No worries.
I just took note of the questions as well so that we can get back to them, also for David later on. Who wants to continue?
I can continue.
I'll chip in if you like.
Go ahead.
Is that okay? Can you hear me? I'm William Wood, Bill Wood. I live in Australia. I've been paid by the Australian government for a few years now to do aid work in Southeast Asia. My last project was a one-year stint in Cambodia, bringing clean water to villages and health centres, working with a local NGO. I'm really enjoying the course. I find it extremely well structured, extremely well organised, and stimulating. I miss, because this was such a large proportion of work with a small NGO, the whole fundraising aspect. The large NGOs that we deal with seem to have effortlessly money at their disposal, but fundraising would be one of, if not the most significant factor from time to time in the life of a small NGO anyway. And I think also of a medium-sized NGO, getting the money, getting the donors, keeping the donors on side. These tend to be huge tasks in my experience. Anyway, that just by the by. The only criticism I have of the course is that the week schedule is utterly distracting and meaningless. I don't have a schedule that shows those things without going back. I'd much rather you stick to, as you do, much rather you stick to the dates or to the subjects. That's easier to navigate. There's too much confusion. A better IT system would help as well.
Can you explain that a bit, William? Hi, William. Can you explain that a bit about the schedule?
Yes,
the announcement.
I've got no schedule that links weeks, but weeks are clearly important to you. So fine, keep them to yourselves. They're just a confusion for me. All I want is a date. Dates I can work with.
Okay. Yeah, William. We changed that and we put the dates on every structure. Yeah, I got it. I will show you in advance. Yes.
Really little thing, but anyway.
No. That's perfectly clear. Yeah, I got it. Who wants to continue?
Yes, I can continue. This is Emmanuel. I'm WASH PM, and I'm working with an international non-governmental organization. I've been working as a WASH specialist, WASH PM, and different coordination roles in the past 10 years. I'm currently in Iraq. I'm also very interested, on this course, but I am wondering how we can, as a humanitarian worker, we have our own guiding principles, we have our own mandates and priorities. I'm just want to see like a practical example, how will this integration, especially the humanitarian with the peace actors, without compromising these guiding principles and also, priorities and mandates of the international non-governmental organization, especially when it comes to the peace actors, on the ground. And then when it comes to the question I have is, as I mentioned in the course, for this triple nexus to work, there need to be a coordination, collaboration, a lot of things need joint planning, analysis, and so on. But I was wondering, and also to have a common understanding, but I was also wondering that, let alone between non-governmental organization, development actors, and the peace actors, is there a common understanding even within the non-governmental international organizations? I want to know if there is really a common understanding and acceptance of triple nexus. Thank you.
Emmanuel, just one question. Do you consider as a good example or as a missing aspect the lack of practical examples? That was not clear to me if I would put it on the tops or on the tips. I was just...
Which one, on the innovative aspect, on the question I have?
Yeah, about the humanitarian and practical examples and integration. It is something that you are missing or something that you already see on the course?
No, this is something I foresee as a challenge in terms of practically on the ground, how we can work out all those major, I mean, kind of differences and put into effect or put into to materialize triple nexus and develop resilience at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Thank you very much. Who wants to continue? Rafa, you have the hand up long time ago. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good morning, all. This is Rafat. I am from Syria and working on with UNICEF as a WASH officer in northeast Syria, one of the most complex humanitarian situation in the current in the previous years. Mainly, I'm responsible about the emergency response in camps, and one of the famous camps now, Al-Hol camp. So the resilience is a new experience for me, and I'm very willing to know more and more. The good thing that this course is very informative, that we cannot catch up with all information provided. Like for myself, I'm 2 weeks behind the schedule now. And one of the challenges that, or it's a question, why the week start on Wednesday?
Why did we start on Wednesday? You mean the...
Why not on Sunday or Saturday?
When did we start?
You mean the last live session?
No. Each week start on Wednesday.
Monday. Well, actually, each week starts on Monday.
There was a challenge with the internet system, so you're receiving the emails for the week later. So
Okay.
in the last week, there has been a challenge with the eCampus when the announcements are put. Sometimes you don't get them, so we have to send them again, so you get them later. But usually the week starts on Monday, so we post the announcements on Monday.
Yeah.
But then this challenge, I'm sure this week, you're not, next week that will be resolved.
Okay.
So usually they are posted on Mondays.
So there is a delay on the announcements, and then you are lost about when the week starts.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Exactly.
then someone was talking.
Yes, Juliette, just to say to everyone that the weeks are open every Monday. So check which weeks are opened so you can continue the course. You don't need to get the announcement to get the week open on eCampus. Does that make sense?
So
Yep.
every Monday the week has opened. So just check even when you don't have the announcement. But usually you should. I'm sure from next week that is resolved, so you should get the announcements on Monday.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. No, that is important, Rafa. Thank you very much for the point there. Tips of questions that you may have as well. Anything else, Rafa?
Yes, regarding the tips to improve, I think it will be very helpful to have more and more case studies and examples from the field about how coordination could work, especially during emergencies and you want to run a resilient project. So I think this is one of the, will be of complex situation that we could have.
Thank you very much, Rafa.
Thank you.
I see a hand raised. I think it is, let me see, Abdullah Arwa. Or, well, I don't know who was first, but okay.
I think, yeah, good morning. I think Muhammad was first because the number is mentioning number 1. But if you want me to go, I'm fine with that.
Well, no, Mohammed, please go ahead. You were first, so we'll respect the order.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Najib Katbe. I'm water and habitat engineer. It is the fifth years with the ICRC. I'm working in Syria, Aleppo City. Like for me, like the best part of this course, it's about these triple nexus and how to reflect to our country, like how to connect or improve each items, and like how to cooperate and coordinate with other parties, like between humanitarian development and maybe other parties working on the peace. The tips for me about this course, like as Rafat mentions, a lot of information. So some, especially like during this, working hours, or yani sometimes like we need like to spend more than 8 hours to catch up the course. So I think most of the participants on this course like behind the schedule. That's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. We will get into the planning for the second week, also about the study load later on, but thanks for the tip now. Arua, your turn.
Yes, thank you, Juliet. So my name, as you mentioned, Arwa Abdelhai. I am from Jordan, and I am not a WUSH practitioner. I am from academia, so I am a professor at the German Jordanian University. I'm professor of water and environmental engineering. But why I am enrolled in this program is part of the capacity building of the local staff, because I am the coordinator of a recently launched master program on humanitarian WASH, where we are seeking for building the capacities of our national staff. And that's why I am enrolled in this professional diploma. As you may know, Jordan, in terms of water scarcity, is in the third place worldwide. So it's a water scarce country, and we went through several extreme weather events, droughts, as well as flash floods. And that's why I am quite interested to know how we can deal with the climate consequences and implications, especially in emergency context, because Jordan in the past years received a lot of or huge influx of Syrian refugees, Yemenis, and Iraqi refugees from Iraq. So what I wanted to know is how to deal with these consequences or climate implications in emergency settings, because sometimes we have, and I'm talking about Jordan, the I would say the institutional capacity is weak in this regard. So just briefly, in terms of your question about the course, I think the rhythm of the course is quite good. So thank you for that. It's not as intensive, honestly, as the previous courses, because we were overloaded with so many assignments and tasks and so on. So I think this one is good. But if we can just also, I'm not sure if this will be covered in the coming videos, but if we can also highlight how we can build the capacity of the development actors in order to ensure smooth handing over between the humanitarian actors then to the development actors, because this handing over sometimes is taking place, but afterward we discover, like we can find out that the quality of the services are declining once the development actors, or especially the local government, takes over and be the only responsible for providing WASH services. Thank you very much.
Arua, thank you very much. I think that this last aspect that you just mentioned about the handing over, it is part of the group assignment. And it is an aspect that I hope that the course will inspire you, for you to suggest interventions on the teams. I also wanted to give thank you to Karine, Akosua, and Acela, who has been keeping the eye so that we don't put a lot of information and keep the assignments on track for you. So I wanted to give credits to that, the fact that we are co-developing the course together. Who else is missing? I don't know. Yeah, Lambert, I saw him, but he left.
I think he has connection issues, so it's in and out.
Out. Okay. So I wanted to thank you all. So David, I collected these questions in advance so that you have some time to think about the aspects that the students are interested more. If you would like in any moment to go back a little bit to your slides to highlight something that is also possible. I think that the next part of this presentation is regarding the feedback on the course course assignment on the part 1. So David, you will have some time. We are going to talk now about the assignment. Of course, if you want to know more about that, more than welcome as well. So Karine, I give you, well, maybe just an introduce about the assignment. So in the assignment, we are working for the case study in Gambela, Ethiopia. As Arua mentioned, we are looking at a water supply system that is having problems to handing over the water services to the local authorities and has implemented a triple nexus approach in essence that is using part of the funding from the humanitarian organizations to support the development of the water supply system. We asked the students to summarize the case study in 5 questions. The first one was related to resilience for whom, then resilience of what, resilience to what, and resilience through what, and which well-being outcomes by reflecting on the qualities so far implemented and the aspects that are missing. And then Karine and Akoso have revised those assignments and will share today with us their insights for improvement. So Karine, please go on.
Can Akosua, you may start, no?
Akoso, who wants to start?
Once you can start, I have to set up my computer.
Yeah, Akoso is setting up, so that's why I was.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah, Akoso is setting up her computer, so you can start, and in the meantime.
Okay. So can you go to the next slide, please, Juliet? Two slides.
Shall I put some slides? Yeah, the
Yeah.
next ones. Okay.
Oops. No, you don't have the last version.
Okay, I will refresh, maybe.
Okay, no worries.
You can share
for
your screen
everyone.
as well.
Yes. First, as general feedback to everyone. So we read your assignment. I want to remind everyone that the assignment is going to be for 16 weeks. So you have the same case study that you will build on every task to at the end be able to submit a concept note. So it's quite important actually to consider those feedback, but also, you know, to ensure that everyone in the group and your work is well structured. Because, you know, if task 1 is not well structured, because task 2 is based on task 1, it will be quite difficult. So that's something I wanted to highlight to all students. My first general feedback for your work, and then I have more, I mean, technical aspect to consider, was that I was very glad to see that everyone have very well understood the case study. They were, this can be seen in all the group work. You have really go into the Ethiopia. I just feel that everyone knew more than me Gambela. So that was very nice. And also in terms of concept, we could see that most of them, I will say, because some of them were not completely understood, but most of them were understood. In terms of structure of the assignments, there is some difference in terms of quality, and that's where I understand the workload and I understand it's a group work, so it's a bit difficult. But as more as your work is structured, more the next step will be easier. So I will suggest to all groups to ensure that you structure well your work, to ensure that you are capable to build on. So that's a general feedback for me, just, you know, looking at the structure, at the main content. Then in terms of, let's say, major consideration to consider, So you don't have the slide?
You can
Yeah.
share it, Karine, maybe?
No,
I
because
don't-
it is online.
Oh,
I can't.
that
It's
is
okay.
so strange.
So it's on Surf Drive.
Ah, okay, that's why. Okay, I was working
Yeah.
in Google Docs. That's why.
And I can't. But anyway, I'm gonna share my feedback. The meantime, you can find it on the Surf Drive.
Yeah, no. I got it now. Yeah, I'm just trying to set it about. Just go
Okay.
ahead.
Just okay. So one of the things that I noticed in the group assignment was maybe a misunderstanding on what is the social dimension of sustainability. This is about considering, let's say, the social networks and the social norms of a group of people, okay? So could be host communities, could be refugees, could be looking at women, could be looking at a village. So social, it's about a group of people that share a common interest, and looking at this social dimension. Is it changed? Did it need to be strengthened? Is there any challenges? So for example, in the case study, you have refugees and host communities. So you could see that maybe there will be some tension because of water pressure, for example, and other. In the refugees, you may have different ethnicity. You may have different roles also in terms of who is in charge of the water. So maybe it's a woman. So that's the kind of thing that we are expecting in terms when you look at social dimension. Okay. I will say that I appreciate one or two groups that have highlighted the fact that the public health aspect of WASH. And it's a bit difficult. It's true that it's a bit difficult to see where to put it in this dimension of sustainability. But I appreciate that you make the link with Module 2 on public health in emergencies. So if it's on technical, if it's on social dimension, this is not a big matter. But I appreciate that you look at public health risk. So that was for social dimension, that where I saw a bit of confusion for some groups. When we look at technical dimensions, it will have been nice that it's an easy one, huh? But we are speaking about WASH services. And actually, I keep saying that often to Juliette when we are developing the course. I'm like, about which WASH services are we speaking about? And it's quite important that you also define, are we speaking about the water supply system? Are you speaking about the waste management? Are we speaking about the water and sanitation services? Are you speaking about the hygiene system? So most of you have been speaking about the water supply network, but didn't, look at the system, at the service. And I think it's quite important when you look at the technical dimension that you clearly identify about which service you are speaking about. And I'm anticipating question. I agree with all of you when you say we should be looking at WASH services because we are WASH professional and we know that they may need to be integrated. However, you may need to separate it for this resilience approach because we look at a system approach. Okay, that's about the technical dimension of. Yes, Mahmoud, do you have a question on that?
Yeah, sorry for interruption. Regarding
No,
this, because the case study here focusing more in the water system. That's what we are seeing in the case study. So that we are focused in the water system and maybe less on the sanitation or garbage or something like this. That's what we are maybe doing in the case study. Thank you.
Yes. No, I fully agree, but it was not clear in some group work that we are looking at the water supply. Maybe it's obvious and it's evident for everyone, but it was not clear on the reading that we are only speaking about water supply. And I think it has to be clearly mentioned that technically we are looking at the water supply network, from the water sources to the distribution to the population. So that's on the institutional part. I quite we quite appreciate your answer. It will be nice to sometimes think. So there is a decentralization process in Gambela because we are not at the national level. So what is the linkages with the national level? And some of the group highlighted that. But also at the local level, what will be the relation maybe with the other sector in terms of institutional governance? Maybe there will be challenges with local authorities. Maybe there will be coordination needed with the Ministry of Health, etc., etc. These things also are quite important to highlight. So this was more on the maybe definition of the dimension, and we are not on this feedback. We are taking, let's say, confusion for all the groups. So we are not speaking for one group. We just collected all the confusion. So some of you may have done confusion in social and some in institutional. One key confusion I've seen in the next questions and in a couple of group assignments, and I think that's something that we may need to highlight more in the course, is the confusion between challenges and hazard and shocks. So when we spoke about the hazard and shocks, we are speaking about events that are quite sudden and important and will induce a change. So for example, when we speak about, I'm going to take one that's a bit, when we speak about the economical dimension, a shock could be an economical crisis. Yes? When the challenge is maybe the willingness to pay. So there were here quite confusion in some groups. So on the first question, we were asking you to highlight the challenges. But when we look at the hazard and the shocks, we are anticipating major events that could have an implication in this dimension. And this was not very clear for all the groups. And I think will be more clear when we will go on the risk assessment on part 2. But that's something to consider. Do you want to add here, Akosua, or should I go to all the questions?
Yes. I also wanted to add on the challenges and the shocks and the hazards. Yeah. That is what I also realized, that when it gets to the challenge and then it gets to the hazard, it wasn't really clear what is the challenge and what is the hazard. So yeah, the hazard, we already described the hazardous event. That is the technical. So what hazards? We're coming out from the technical dimensions of the system. So we're expecting to see some hazards, but then, it was limited to a lot of descriptions, but then the actual hazards were not clear. Yeah. So we couldn't really see what is the difference between what your challenge is and what the hazard is. So the challenge can be the event or can be because of the dimension that is happening. So what is the hazard? For instance, someone said if the locals are paying more for the water, they may not use the water. And the hazard is that they are going to use water from unapproved sources. They may get sick. So the event here was the cost of the water, and then the hazard is that people are going to get sick because they will use different things. But that is what we're expecting to see from this. So in some places, the challenges were mixed with the hazards.
Yeah.
So now it's not very clear. So it's for you to really differentiate between what a hazard is and then what a challenge is. That was one of the, also the main challenge I picked out in all of that.
And again, this definition will be seen in part 2, I think in a couple of weeks, Juliette.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so it will help you to come back maybe to that part and to build your concept notes. So don't be worried also, and don't start looking maybe by yourself what is hazard, event, risk, because in a couple of weeks it's gonna become clearer.
Yeah, I think that it is good to be aware
Yeah.
of this confusion, because we tend to always relate it. So we always look at challenges on one side. On the other side, when we look at resilience, we need to start thinking about hazards across the 5 dimensions, and that might create a confusion. But being aware that you need to distinguish at first will help you to be conscious about that, and later on in the risk part, you will hopefully, and that's what we all hope, get a better understanding of this aspect. So be aware, think about it, try to make the distinction now, and also working in the part 2 of the assignment, you will realize more about that. Anything else, Afonso?
No, at that point, I think it's fine. But then, also, but one point about describing the case. So I think it was just to describe the case where the water system is. So what is happening in that place, how many camps are there, how many host towns have been served. But then in some groups, it was like a bit more very general, not so specific to the case. So the idea is to describe the case, describe what is happening, and in the refugee, like how many refugee camps are there, how many people have been served, how many host nations, that is host cities, that is what we wanted to see. But it's a bit more general. Yes, you can describe from how they came in, but then that should not be the focus. The focus is to be describe what is where the system is supplying, what is happening in those areas. That is the case that we wanted you to describe.
So be more specific also help you to have more specific assignment and more specific intervention. So that's the reason for that.
Yeah. And then also on the question 2, resilience for what? And then we're given the different dimensions. Juliet already spoke about the dimensions, but then what I also realized was that most of it was like giving recommendations. So what are the opportunities? And then you wish like you're giving recommendations. Like, so when they do this, this will happen. Okay, that is fine. But then again, what is the opportunity in having a cyclical dimension or a challenge in the dimension? Besides the challenge and the hazard messing up, it's most of the groups, it read more like recommendations than stating what the opportunity or the challenge is. So specifically stating what is the opportunity, focusing on that, rather than giving out the recommendation about what will happen if these things are done.
Yeah. So basically, related by now is putting yourself outside of the case study and just describing what is happening without recommending yet, because then you will bias your intervention and you will limit yourself to maybe discover something that you haven't realized just because you didn't took distance to recommend at first. That's something that we always try to do.
Okay. And one more very important thing I realized, most of you were copying directly from the case, which we had a talk on plagiarism in this course, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So
well, not in this one, but in the previous one.
In the previous courses, so most of it was just a copy paste into the assignment, and that is so much unacceptable. It's for you to read the document and understand, and then write them in your own words. It will have the same meaning, but then in your own words, but not copying and pasting directly from the book. That is very unacceptable.
And something else?
I think it's also.
May I have then on the next question on the qualities.
Yeah.
and the qualities is more highlighted than in other questions. Again, this feedback is for you to keep in mind. And actually next week we'll be speaking about WASH building blocks and system. But most of you have been thinking about the network. And I think most of you are engineers, and I'm an engineer, so not, it's not something that, but you have been thinking about the network, maybe instead of looking at the system. And I could see that more on the question about the resilience quality. And I think it will be very important, as Juliette said, to take off, I will say, your engineer lens and put new one, which is the resilience lens, but to get this system thinking approach. Okay, so this is just to keep in mind. But when we come about the resilience quality, most of you spoke about the network and didn't look at other dimension and other building blocks that you will see next week. So it's just to keep in mind that when it comes to the definition of this resilience quality, I think more or less they were quite okay, except maybe for a couple of groups, redundancy. I think is the definition that is less understood. So redundancy is the capacity to respond to extreme pressure, let's say. So it's, for example, having a preparedness or contingency plan. Okay, which is the case in the ITAM case study. So there were a couple of other answers, but redundancy is something that maybe you should come back to the definition. But it's about this extreme pressure, this extreme event. Do you have something about the resilience quality, Akosua?
Yeah, I think on this aspect, you could refer to the document on the contingency plan, and that will give you a lot of ideas in there. Yeah. Because here it was more describing, some aspects were very good, like in the redundancy, you could see that it wasn't clearly understood what it is. So you can refer to the document on the contingency plan, and then it will help you a lot to, even for this part, that part, and also the part that precedes that. The part on resilience report, sometimes it also helps to look at that. So read that document, and then it will help you to answer the some redundancy question and the other ones very well.
So I think for the resilience quality, for me, that was the main comment. And then on the organigraph, just some mention it, but I just wanted to highlight. Don't forget to include water users and maybe non-water users, because that's part of accountability to affected population, that we include people that will receive the service, but also the ones that are not receiving the service. So it's quite important to see it on the stakeholder organigraph. The private sector, I think, is the same, was not very clear mentioned here. And the donors part. So the donor part it is quite important, I think, in this type of setup for financial reason.
So if you list them also, in most of the assignment it was just listed. So if you list the stakeholder, you need to at least briefly describe what their role is, and then why they are part of this. So just describe it a bit, and then you can put it there. You can, you should find a way to modify this so that people can they can already add to the graph. But I think it's restricted, so they can't add to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are questions here. The first one, the definition of the slides regarding redundancy was the availability of resources or redundant parts to remain functional. And yes, and the reference that Karina is doing to the contingency plan, it is because the plan is like a a redundant element of the water supply system that helps to remain functional. But of course, you also need to think when to remain functional, and this is what extreme events are considered. So it is not all. It is you are redundant by keeping also in mind what are the extreme events that can happen, so that you actually avoid not to be functional. I think that that's the relationship that Karin was doing about keeping in mind extreme events. And yes, Arua, you are right. The definition is about the availability of resources to be redundant. Does it help? It's a good point to clarify, because maybe I also felt it like it could be confused with robustness. But in this case, the robustness, it is the system as a whole to remain functional, whereas the redundancy, it is having a backup plan, having something that in case it fails, it's there. I think that one example that I love it, and it was very simple regarding, it was the very first presentation of Shirish. He says, having a second person that is leading the group. So that second person, he was leading a project, coordinating projects, and having one person that can take over in case the project, he is not available anymore, is that type of functionality. In the extreme situation that the lead of the project is not available, there is someone who is there as a backup plan or as a contingency plan. Who wants to? So contingency plan is the resort. Yes, Maria. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. And there are many other resources. Actually, I love an example of David about having a map of all the alternative networks. That's one very nice example of redundancy that you can think about. Mapping who are the alternative networks that might be available. Okay. Maria, are we getting individual feedback? Kariniana Koswa.
Yeah, we can send them to you. I have written them down in the documents. I will just share them with you individually to the groups.
To each group, you will receive an email either from Karine or Akoswa regarding the comments that we just discussed. This session was also to be aware others of this feedback. Who else is? Yes, Abdel, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question still on the redundancy, because I am still confused about this. So Karin just mentioned the contingency plan, but does it mean that having a plan would guarantee to keep the system functional? Because the plan itself would contain a lot of resources, would highlight a lot of resources to be needed, like to ensure having a functional system. So sometimes we have contingency plans that would the plan itself would fail in emergency context. So this is what confused me when we were doing the assignment. So having a plan for me doesn't guarantee 100% a functional system. However, it highlights what kind of resources are needed, or needs to be in place in order to keep my system functional. Am I right on that, or?
Yeah, I can answer. Maybe a functional contingency plan will help to answer you, Dr. Awa. A contingency plan, and I think it's a mistake we do in the humanitarian sector. A contingency plan is not a document. It's actually having the resources to implement this document. So I think maybe it will help by writing a functional contingency plan, so not having the document, as you are saying, Dr. Arwa. Having a document saying what we should do if we don't have the resources, indeed, it's not going to make a system redundant, because we will have the document, but we will not have the resources. So I think to clarify, and it's true that often we only have the document in the humanitarian sector because we don't have donors following that document. We are not doing sufficient advocacy to get the resources. Maybe having a functional contingency plan with the adequate resources is what is a key element of a redundant system.
Yeah, that's a good point, Aru, and also to build up on the point of Maria. A plan is a guidance, but certainly inside that plan there are many resources that need to be considered. So just to clarify on that part, which is a very good one. And also in the third part of the course, we will talk about monitoring. And by monitoring this time, we are talking about monitoring the activities that we do as part of our interventions that will help us to raise a bell for ourselves and for the donors when things are not happening as we write in our plans. Any other questions regarding the assignment? So that we can move on with the next part.
I have one.
Maria, right? Please
Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. I think it is very useful for all of us. I just wanted to comment something that is not related to, let's say, the technical point of view, or it's just the fact, and I hope you guys are working on it, that I'm working by myself, and it's been absolutely, I mean, like, I don't have a group, and I don't think they're going to reach out at any point. So I hope there is something we can do, because the workload is, for me, is like unfeasible.
Yeah, no, it's not only the workload, it is also that the group is meant to be a group discussion, and the fact that you are doing it on your own, you are also missing the insights that group members can give you. I think that we will...
Yeah, so far the groups that are active, they are already 4. And then I don't know which group to add to know.
But we will figure it out this week. So either you are move on to another group, so that you can work with others.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to contact your group members, and then
they are just not replying. I mean, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
So I think that the way to move will be to move her to another group.
Yeah. So we'll discuss this after this meeting, and then
No, but and this is also a call for the rest one. The assignment is fun. You can learn a lot. We understand that you have a field work, but the fact that you are not doing the work also limits your learning on the course, and the opportunity that we have to provide you feedback. We make explicit that if you don't submit the first part of the assignment, you don't receive the second part, so that at least you, because it doesn't make sense to give you assignments that are building up to each other if you don't try to do the first one. For you to know, the deadline for submission to this part 1 of the assignment, the final one for grading, it is together with the draft of the group assignment of the second part. We will go to the deadlines at the end, but so for you to know that with this feedback you can improve it and you can submit it for grading. Shall we then move on to the next part of the session? I assume that silence means yes. Okay, chat. Okay, there is a new message. Okay. Yes. Okay. So the next part is regarding the sharing opportunities and challenges of the triple nexus. So I will bring down the questions that we have on the top. And we have also some triggering questions with Karim. So Karim, do you think would be a nice idea to bring back the questions that they had on the top so that they can share some preliminary insights and then ask the participants? Yeah. Okay. So let me see. And this is not here because I had it in the other document. Don't bother me. So Dave, just to ask you, how would you like to share? So questions from participants regarding the gap. How to address the gap was one of the first ones. And also successful examples involving these concepts that actually work and give robustness to the system and strength. Something about fundraising, and how to get basically the donors active. Is there a common understanding of the nexus? And the implications of emergency context for the triple nexus regarding the climate and refugees combined. So I don't know, how would you like to maybe share some thoughts at the beginning?
Okay, Juliet, can I jump in at this stage? You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Look, I don't have any structure in mind, so I'm going to jump from one to another question, and then maybe we have a discussion. First thing, I think I'm glad to see that I'm the ICRC expert on the Nexus. I think I'm not, in fact, but we are all, that's the point number one. In WASH sector, as engineers, we are all discovering a little bit this triple nexus. And so we are learning as it goes. So on the first question, I think it was Maria who wrote the main question first. Where does this piece component fit? How do we program for it? If you remember the presentation that we did, I think it was in...
I can open it for you.
Oh yeah, why not?
That might help, I think.
There's a slide, I will tell you which one it is. It was...
So this was the one about coordination and operation examples. And this is about programming and financing.
Where does
We can't hear you, David.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I have to change my microphone like this.
That I had the validation error.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm putting out there.
Okay. Juliet, you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but very light. So maybe it's a far, yeah, putting it closer would be the only solution at this moment.
I'm trying. So if you go in the presentation on coordination and operation, slide, what was it? Slide 14. This is a slide that I added in last minute because, yeah, that one. And that will bring me to Maria's question, what about the piece components? So the first element in the discussion we had and we're having about this triple nexus is, okay, as water, WASH, engineer, practitioner, as humanitarians, the peace part of the nexus is not always obvious. That's the tricky one. And we've got to make a little bit of mental gymnastic to wrap our hand about. The first nexus, the double one, humanitarian development, was quite intuitive. And this double nexus is indeed still developing and quite logical. We all identified links between humanitarian and development and ways to work together in a better way. Now, peace is a bit trickier. So my first, or this slide, for what it's worth, first states that it works both ways. Conflict, which is I sometimes call it the dark side of peace, impacts our program. So conflicts can trigger needs related to our programs. But on the other way, poor programming can increase or can be a factor in tensions, in violence, and therefore can have a value when it comes to peace discussions. So that's the first, I would say, element. It goes both ways. Now, for us practitioner, I think the point number one, and if you face donors, if you face your colleagues, if you face any other stakeholders, the name of the game is realism and pragmatism. There's only so much the engineers and the WASH specialists can do. Water aspects or any of our programs are just one of the many factors that contributes to peace or conflict. So I would say point number one, realism. Manage expectations. It's very much about communication and being clear that no matter how powerful the engineers are, probably the key to peace in the world or in a smaller area is not entirely on the shoulder of WASH programming. Now this said, and that will link a little bit to the question of William on fundraising, and I think William made the point of small NGOs versus big NGOs. If we narrow down from the entire world to more local scale, there are things that can be done. And I think the triple nexus is putting on paper what many practitioners have been doing or have been familiar with for many years. There are elements in our water programming or services programming that directly feed into local tensions or no tension. A classic for water engineers, and especially in water-scarce regions or regions where water has to be transported over some distance, is water rights between communities, between villages. I mean, that's a big classic that has been a source of tensions between communities, or at least negotiations and agreements over millennia. And most of us who have been involved in village level, region level programming know that this absolutely has to be part of our programming. So that is something you can sell as a piece component in a program, but always putting, I would say, the realistic scale of it. It's not going to solve transboundary water tension, but this is a contribution, and this is something that, if forgotten, may indeed trigger tensions between two villages, two communities, or neighbors. So far, so good. Juliette, you still hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
All right, I'm checking with you. So these for me were the two first hammer questions. How do we include the peace component? So here my short answer is you can, but be realistic. Think local. When it comes to fundraising, I mean, there, William, speaking in the voice of ICRC, it is true, and that's why I stuck to ICRC. When it comes to humanitarian funding, we are flexible. We don't, we're not involved actually at all in the fundraising. So as an engineer, you can focus on the program. But my tip here is that this triple nexus, or at least the long-term benefit, the development-oriented benefits, or even the peace-building benefits can be developed at all scale. Therefore, if you have a smaller NGO working on local programs in Cambodia, there are definitely arguments that you can bring up for your donors on these topics that are not only, I would say, trendy, but actually valid, and that hopefully will increase your fundraising capacity. I'm jumping to the next one. I wrote that's I would say a tricky one in a way, and a simple one in the other way, from Emmanuel about peace actors. Are there is there a common understanding? What is the definition? And how do we reconcile their presence with our principles? I think here Emmanuel has in mind neutrality, impartiality, independence. So this one, from the top of my head, I would say first, I don't think there is a single definition. As usual, there's probably many definitions. Everybody claims to be a peace actor, and then it depends through which scope you look at it. I like to break down complicated or complex landscapes of stakeholders in a simple fashion. And I would say, Emmanuel, this is the beauty of the principles of neutrality, impartiality, independence. Whatever the tag on a stakeholder, peace actor, else, you put it in your mapping of stakeholder, depending on the mandates, the actions, the position of that stakeholder, you put this in perspective to indeed your need for absolute neutrality and impartiality, and you treat as an actor this stakeholder the same way you would treat any other. If their principles fit absolutely with our own principles, you can engage fully. If you're facing, let's say, a peacekeeping force that is standing on one side of the front line in the conflict, when you engage that stakeholder the same way you engage an armed group or military force, with all the precautions.
It's getting far, the sound, yeah.
Okay. I have to get rid of this microphone. Note for later. Okay. So here there's no maybe clear-cut answer, but I would say it's all about stakeholder mapping, and you would go about, maybe I wouldn't care too much about definitions because I think there's 1,000 definitions, but indeed the good point of Emmanuel is you do have an absolute reference. It's the principles of neutrality, impartiality, independence, and you judge if your counterpart fits in that or not, and if not, if you apply your precautions. Arwa asked the question about how to include climate consequences into programming, and she raised also the good point about smooth handovers from humanitarians to developers. So climate consequences, I mean, it's a bit of a new topic on paper. For most of us, it's a reality since many years that we are now, or everyone is formalizing after we all notice it's a reality in the field. Here, again, tell me if my reply is too simplistic, but and it depends also about the approach we have to engineering, WASH, and our role. I like to see engineers as problem solvers and champions of analytics. In that sense, I would say the inclusion of a new risk, in bracket climate change, into our program should be almost an easy step, because if engineers are experts in risk analysis, establishing scenarios of what could go wrong, and establishing layers of redundancies, plan B, plan C, plan D, climate change in a way is just another parameter in the game. So my first hope is that the definition of an engineer is an analytical problem solver. Then it shouldn't be a big step to include extra things. Then of course, you have seen maybe in the presentation or maybe in what we say, the question is not to engage in the debate about climate change and the effects. Like many events, the exact effects are linked to a level of probability and uncertainty. So here the name of the game for us is not to discuss is it highly probable, totally improbable, what's going to happen exactly, but it is to establish various scenarios, think about worst case scenarios, and as we like to say sometimes, to plan for the worst and hope for the best, but not to engage in climate debate. planning is essential. If it happens or not remains to be seen. The smooth handover, and that's a good point that Arwa is making. Arwa, I think you mentioned smooth handover from humanitarian to developers. I would even expand it a little bit, because what we are trying to promote in some of our work on Nexus, how to join forces. If you have seen the report that UNICEF and World Bank, is that it's even a cycle. We are even asking that in quiet phases, bracket, developers start thinking in terms of resilience, all hazards, and things going wrong and instability. When crisis hit, it's part of their scenarios, and therefore they can also pass some of the information to humanitarians, because we often see pretty cycle. We have developer, then humanitarian, then maybe developer come back. And worst case scenario, it goes up and down and back and forth. And then so it goes from one to the other. Then it's an important point, because often when we discuss about Nexus, people think it's all about the money. I mean, it often comes to the mind of many colleagues. Okay, the core of the Nexus is that the World Bank gives $100 million to UNICEF or ICRC to do a big giant program, but it's not only that. If you read through the reports and presentation, it's also very much about information sharing, about thinking differently, about having the developers thinking also in a crisis mode, sharing information that they collect over decades that is super important and essential for us. And on the other hand, having humanitarians thinking long-term as quick as possible into a crisis. And of course, there's a huge component of information management, information sharing, if possible, joint tools. That's a tricky one, but meaning it's not all about the money. So indeed, and it's all developing, and it's relatively new for us in ICRC. It's been a few years. We are in our first experiments. The example I brought about Juba is one of our first real life experience, where we have that one, where we have a functional, clear, and official collaboration with the developer. So it will take probably another few years until things fall into place. You see that in the conclusion about challenges, we often talk about different cultures, because we are still discovering each other. We're still trying to understand what the other is thinking and how each goes about problems. But so, yeah, smooth handover is, for me, very dependent on mindset, information sharing, and management, and it can go one way or another way. So now I rambled a bit on what I wrote down, but if anyone wants a live question, let's make it a discussion. I'll give you what I can from the top of my head.
Yeah, I love the insights, David. If I can summarize, so the first one, it was like keep it realistic and be pragmatic. The second one, it was about plan for the works and hope the best. And the third one was, it's not all about money, also about information sharing and working on tools together. I love them, the three of them, by the way.
And, you know, we often have this discussion with our teams. I mean, if you ask me, it's mostly common sense. There's no groundbreaking issues, but indeed we see that in our programs and in the heat of the action, we tend to forget even the most obvious basic lessons.
Maria, you have the hand raised long time ago. please go ahead to make it also a discussion.
Yes, thank you. Do you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Nice if you turn on your camera if you can, so at least
Oh, okay.
we are not in a radio station.
Okay, no, let me do that. All right. Thank you, David, for answering our questions. I don't have any specific questions related to what you just shared. I would just like to share with you guys things that come to my mind when listening to you. The first point, and I think you didn't talk about it, I don't know if I missed it, is, and I mentioned that, and also Rafat, the fact that not really having specific examples on how to include the component of peace, it gives me this idea of how weak we are at this moment within the humanitarian sector when we talk about the triple nexus. I do understand that it is something relatively new, let's say, so that replication is not easy at the moment, or having a real case study. Like, Juliet, I don't know if I can see the slide on how to include the peace part that David wanted to show us, because I just wanted to point something out from there. So when hearing you speaking about the triple nexus, I was wondering if, for example, now when activating the clusters, not only the WASH cluster, of course, are we having like working groups, like triple nexus working group, you know, like when responding to emergencies? I would like to know that. I haven't seen it, and I've been in emergencies like very frequently in the last ones, Ethiopia, Sudan, or whatever. I would like to know if there is this kind of approach, just like setting up triple nexus working groups, or a cluster or something that gives us an idea about how important it is when responding to emergencies and doing the triple nexus, right? Emergency development and peace. Then if related to that, I was wondering if by any chance there is a sort of, I don't know, sharing knowledge platform where we can see how partners are doing this. And then I was also wondering if, as humanitarians, we are addressing or let's say using the triple nexus as a way of working. I do remember when community engagement and accountability was there on the focus, and for some of us was just like ticking a box, you know, like, are you taking into account community engagement? Yes, and that's all. But it wasn't a way of working. Now we're kind of understanding that CEA is a way of working. I do community engagement and accountability from the beginning till the end, right? So it also came to my mind, the whole progression of what CEA was at the beginning, what it is now, and if now we are using it or applying it as a way of working, or is just like something very new and a box ticking thing for humanitarians, or is it going to be a way of working in the short run? Yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Thank you. Oh yeah, sorry about the slide here. So I think the slide was very, very useful for me. Thank you for adding it at the end, as you said. But then all the points are very useful and they tell me a lot. But again, what I miss is how to take action, how to make it real. You know, like for example, let's say coordination with peace actors is therefore very relevant, of course, and that is not new, right? But can we see just a case and how we coordinated and collaborated and cooperated with peace actors? Is there a way of doing it? Can you tell us or share an example about it? Then I just don't see, proactive measures and sources of tensions where possible. How is like those points give me a guideline, right? But I would like to know how to do it, or to know who has done it and if it's been successful or not, so that I can have an idea of how to take action in the field. Thank you.
Question, Maria. I can rebound on it, that you're touching, in my view, and again, I'm just arriving in Geneva, discovering also and dipping into this new world. On your first question, yes, some things are happening, some things are organized. I've been involved in my first month here recently in a joint operation framework with UNICEF, the WASH cluster, that is working at the moment on developing documents. I'm not sure about guidelines, but at least trying to formalize the whole triple nexus thing. My unfiltered impression is a bit what I was saying before. For us WASH practitioners, this triple nexus came out, especially humanitarians. This triple nexus arrived a little bit too quick after the double nexus or the new ways of working or the many other similar initiatives. And everybody is still struggling a little bit to indeed think on how to operationally apply this, or where does it really fit in our programs. So it is happening. You will see a number of good number, I guess, of reports coming out, including one from the WASH cluster that should come out pretty soon. If you ask me, because I've been involved a bit in the review, it's still a bit fuzzy. So my fuzzy answer will probably appear in those documents where, like, okay, in a way, some elements have been included in our thinking and programming. In another way, it's difficult to wrap our head around. And then making peace is not always our mandate as humanitarians. So you'll see a few things coming out. I think the first will not answer your need for absolute clarity. Then, I mean, you're right. I mean, I had to take over this presentation in the last minutes while I did this slide, but in retrospect, I would add another slide. If I scratch my head, and really from the top of my head, I would say there is probably two sources of examples. One you named in what you said. It has a lot, and this is local level peace component, I would call it, and it's everything that has to do with community engagement, accountability. I mean, the example I was mentioning about water rights and how water from different sources is shared between communities or even between quarters.
Sound, David, is far again.
Sorry. Is classic, and this can only be solved at local level through proper community-based programming, by first understanding the local reality, and this happens by talking to communities most of the time, and then including them in the process of, okay, who's going to access that source, where is my pipe going to go through, talk about traditional water rights, land and property. And so for me, if you want examples, probably all of you have been doing a lot of local, I don't want to call it peace building, but peace, let's say, inclusion of the peace component in your programs. in your analysis and in your involvement of communities. That would be the very practical, local level of where we as water engineers can have an impact on peace. Then if I jump right on the other side, from very local to very large, I mean, something that will be familiar to all of you in the Middle East or in East Africa, transboundary water management is a potential source of conflict. It is a potential source of tension, and from my experience, I would say these are big problems. I see river transboundary or aquifer transboundary management. There, if you want a practical tip from my side, and that's one that we discussed often with our teams, it's all about communication and information. This is where I see the WASH sector, the WASH practitioners and engineers having a huge role. If you talk about water resources and how it could trigger conflict, it's not at all easy to first get the information, depending where you are, and then vulgarize it and communicate it.
Of the development platform. Okay, but because Latin America is quite different than Africa or Middle East also. Because in governance they have this strong development platform, because they have more natural hazard maybe than conflict. It's quite, possible to include the humanitarian WASH coordination platform under the development. So the idea of UNICEF and the cluster is more to look at national level, how the governance is working for the both sector and how best they can actually coordinate. Is it one above another? Is it complementary? Is it the same? I've seen in a couple of countries sometimes the same. So in peacetime, let's say peacetime, it's become development, and then when there is an emergency, it becomes a humanitarian focus. So the idea is not to have a model everywhere, it's to look at what governance and what are the strengths and challenges of the development sector and the humanitarian sector and how we can work together. It's also quite important when the cluster is activated, it's supposed to be deactivated, no? And when it's deactivated, it's supposed to do a transitioning phase to the leadership of the government. And that's where also, it's quite important to see how it's going to link with the development part. So I think in Ethiopia, there is the One WASH platform. I don't know how the cluster work there, but this could be, this kind of arrangement, coordination arrangement that can be done. In one country, it's quite important to do a triple nexus task force. I think there is no. It really depends on the country, but it's not like it's not like, for example, cash and market or hygiene promotion, where we are a bit pushing, for technical working group to be implemented, not for the triple nexus, but you could if it was needed. Yeah, does that make sense?
Okay, because of time, I wanted to, thank you first of all for your questions at the beginning. David, also for the insights. I think that it is a message for us. We also, and for the course as well, we also need to bring up more examples about the peace part. However, I also want to bring to the attention for all of you, all the participants, that we have a reading exercise. I don't know, I hope that you are seeing the slide now. In the week 6, we have a reading exercise that I sent for all of you, basically taking the examples of a report in applying WASH system approaches in fragile context. I have also one from ICRC in joining forces to combat in protracted crisis, and also related to the EU Resilience Compendium. And I think that I assigned to each of you one case study, because I know that the study load can be very large. And I kindly ask you to summarize it I gave you some slides to summarize the challenges, what are the fragilities, the opportunities, what are the resilience interventions, the triple nexus, the better ways of working, and also to do something innovative, relevant, or thought-provoking. This assignment, it will help you to pass to the next week or to the content of the second part of the course, and I will share it between you once you submit it as a peer review. So that on the one side, you don't need to read all the reports yourself, but also you have the insights of the other participants. So I will kindly ask you to make this reading exercise because it is nice and it will give you some examples. I also wanted to remind you that we have the individual essay assignment. That has a deadline for submission on the July 25. And that includes one part about reflecting on the opportunities and challenges of the triple nexus, so that you can make some more personal additions on this part. Karin formulated three nice questions to help you with that reflection, which I actually like it very much, because this is the type of reflection that we are expecting on this essay. So not only bringing back the references and what you understood on the readings of each week, but also that you help us to think along on the situation in your context where the triple nexus has been applied. Which challenges have you facing, and how do you see this triple nexus applying in other contexts like urban, rural, or in a camp or conflict setting? So please keep in mind these questions to guide your own reflection. I'm very much curious to see and to receive this essay, because it is an opportunity for you to organize a bit all the concepts that we have discussed and put them together into your own place. Any questions regarding the exercise or the assignment? I see a hand raised. It is Arua.
Yeah, thank you, Juliet. Just a short question regarding the previous exercise about challenges and opportunities for the different, yes, for the different case studies. Yeah. So just for one of the questions is about which better ways of working do they apply for which collective outcome. Just to make sure that I got you right. So you mean here that I should link the ways of working to one of the collective outcomes? For example, if I take, let's say, flexible and sustainable funding, this is linked to financing, and then I should link this to one of the collective outcome. Is that what you meant here?
Linking them one-to-one, I don't know. I don't think is necessary, but being aware of what are the ways of working and for which collective outcomes. And this is also, if you remember the collective outcomes that we are talking, we are on the one side looking at the different phases of the disaster risk management. So we are trying to do before, during, and after, but we are also trying to apply the peace concept by looking at the social, at the vertical and horizontal cohesion, which is very much related to the community engagement part that Maria was mentioning, but it is like, how do our programs implemented help that vertical and social cohesion as a starting point for peace? Because as David mentioned, there are not, we are building up these examples and we certainly need to highlight them more. In these reports are some of them. It's not about one-to-one, it is more about which one is there, because the one-to-one at this moment is not.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to make sure of, because like the way the question is formulated, I thought that you meant that we need to connect one working way with one collective outcome, and it was not at all easy for me to do it.
No, actually it's not possible.
As you mentioned, yes, we're talking about different phases. Yeah, now it's clear. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other question regarding this? I wanted to bring out examples that David mentioned. I think that transboundary water management, there are some examples there in these reports about that, and also information sharing and tool sharing is also a way to start with. So remind you about the assignment, keep in mind the questions, and then just to finalize this session, because we are almost 12, so I want to introduce you to the second part of the course. So following the advice of William, hope that you can see it now. Yeah. So the second part of the course, it runs from July until August 15. It starts with the steps to design a climate and conflict sensitive resilience strategy that you will be able to access after you have submitted your reading exercise. After that, we will have the watch system and building blocks that will be running for 2 weeks. So in the first week, you will receive the material, and you will have the second week as an opportunity to work on your assignment, also to keep in mind on the study load and to give you time to work on the assignment. But keep in mind that on that same week, you will have the individual essay submission. I want to use this individual essay submission for peer review. So that's why I needed to, I kindly appreciate that you submitted on time. Then we have the week 9 with the risk-informed assessment, and you will have 1 week to work on that, following with the appraising options and collaborations that you will have it in 2 weeks, so that you can submit your assignment until the end by the August 22. That is the second part of the assignment. It has 3 tasks, as you have seen it. The nice thing about these 3 tasks is that you are working gradually once you have received the content. So the first task, that is about the gaps and ways for strengthening the watch system building blocks, you will work during 2 weeks. The second part, that is about risk-informed assessment and the short list of possible interventions and stakeholders to collaborate with, you will have time to work on those parts 3 weeks. So that hopefully you can provide us with feedback with your assignment by August 22. We shifted the third live session from Monday to Friday to Thursday, I think, to be able to provide you with feedback. So we are not going to postpone this deadline. Otherwise, we cannot provide you feedback by the live session that we did this time. So be aware of that, and please plan your time. Questions about the assignment before I No questions? Silent means good? Okay. So I would like to also mention that this second part of the course, it is all built up in the UNICEF Climate Resilience Guidance that we have it follows the steps of this building climate resilience guidance, and it is divided in 4 phases. Understand the problem and identify and appraise options. We will focus on those 2 phases in this second part of the course, and in the third part of the course, we will focus on the delivery solutions and monitoring and moving forward. So this is how the course is divided. Regarding the step 1, it is beyond the scope of this course and the assignment that you do a conflict analysis and a detailed stakeholder mapping exercise. So you could consider the part 1 of the assignment as our exercise for this step 1. Just keep in mind that the supporting piece with the realism and pragmatism that David is asking us for is very much about strengthening the relationship between groups, strengthening the capacities to prevent local conflicts, also helping with participation in decision-making, addressing the dynamics of exclusion, and building strong relationships between authorities and people, even though, depending on the conflict, sometimes that is a no-way option, and that's why we should keep in mind the humanitarian principles as well. Also building up on this question about shared understanding, does it exist a shared understanding of what the triple nexus is? Again, building up on what David mentioned, sometimes it's not about how do you define each aspect of this triple nexus, it is also about what vision and what collective outcomes do you want to work together for. Resilience is very much about working towards a desired situation. And if we don't agree on what that desired situation looks like, we may be increasing the inequalities in the area instead of working towards the peace and resilience and climate resilience that we are looking for. So it is important that more than agreeing on what the definition it is what is that collective outcome that we are working with and for. And that also, of course, builds up into the activities and outputs that we are we're going to propose, because that's the idea, that we have that guide in mind so that we can program interventions aligned to that. In the case study of the group assignment, that vision, it was defined as a part of the business plan, and that was something that I found interesting of this. It is, of course, regardless of how that business plan is, every intervention that you design, you also need to make sure that it is what are the implications for the case study. But in this case, they try to achieve equitable access to the host and refugee community. They focus on water availability. They also look at the stakeholder participation, even though not at the extent that they, that's one of the challenges that you highlighted yourself in the assignment. They are also trying to extend the sanitation coverage, focusing yet in the water supply system, because this is the first focus, and they are also trying to consider what are the future sustainability of the water services. As Arua mentioned, there is a problem of a smoothing transition, and that is where you, with your team, are looking for strategies or interventions or activities, as Karen called them, that you could propose as part of the group assignment. In the week 7, you will look at the gaps. You will look more at the system part and hopefully alter that part. Also to reflect on what are the possible ways of strengthening. In the step 3, that also corresponds to the another week of this course, you will look again at the identification of risk and the assessment and prioritization of risk, and hopefully causality and impacts. So these are some of the aspects that you need to do for the assignment. You do your risk matrix and identify causes and consequences. And finally, the whole idea of this exercise is that you are able to come up with some interventions that are supported on the gaps that you identified in the system, but also the hazard events, causes or consequences that you would like to prioritize. And finally, the output of this second part of the course, it is that you are able to select of that long list of interventions that are possible, 3 interventions for the water utility of the case study, based on the capacity, the uncertainty, the effectiveness, the efficiency, the equity, the legitimacy, and the synergies that are very much related. Is it pragmatic? Is it realistic? Does it make the problem bigger than it was? So I think that you can, of course, not do this alone, and that is related to the part of coordination. So also you should identify which stakeholders you want to collaborate with, and for which purpose. So this in a glance, it is the content of the second part of the course that certainly I don't expect you to grasp, but just to be aware of the activities, the exercise, and the concepts that we will discuss. With this, are there any questions or any other aspect that you would like to share before we close the session? Silence means no. So if not, I want to give you a big thank you. I mean, one of the challenges of taking taking an online course, it is this live interaction. It is what pays off all the efforts that we do on developing the course, and I hope that it pays off all the efforts that you do for doing the assignments. Karine, Akosua, something else that you would like to say before closing? No.
No, thanks everyone to be here, and yes, we hope that you are enjoying, and we know that it's the last course of this full GPDP, so yes, continue on this path, and we really hope that you are enjoying. We are enjoying.
Oh yeah, initially we were just thinking about who was going to attend, but then looking at the numbers, it's impressive, so yeah, hopefully we keep this up. But then if you have any challenges, you let us know in time, and then we know that you are doing the course, but then you have challenges. We understand that you are in fragile context, you are in fragile status, and then your work demands that you go on the web. So when this happens, let us know, and then we keep track of who is working and then how far you were working. Yes.
David, I would like to give you a big thank for bringing theory to practice, and also for being so honest and open with what is possible and what is not, what you have at hand and what don't. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. That was a nice impromptu. So anytime. Good luck with the rest of the course to the student and the teachers.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. I mean, we will try to keep up after this course, following also the suggestion of Maria. There is a working group in the Triple Nexus, and they meet every now and then. So we can certainly connect you to that group so that we can. There is it's an ongoing discussion that we will not finish in one course.
Sure. Good luck.
Thank you for everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, and good day for the rest of you.
Okay.